Hi, Lee. Welcome to our show.
Hello, Savannah. Welcome. How in the world are you today?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Just got back from New York.
New York City.
Yes, I got 2 tattoos when I was there.
2 what?
Tattoos.
What did you call it? A tatty?
Tattoos.
Oh, okay. Tattoos.
Just saying it the normal way, I think,
yeah.
but maybe I'm saying it fast.
Yeah, I got you.
From Tiny Zaps.
Tiny Zaps.
So they're literally tiny tattoos. And the first one is a T for Todd. He wants to get one with an S here. We meant to get it like years ago, but the tattoo artist was booked, so we didn't get it.
Yes.
And then the other one is this little star that I got to match my 2 friends that I was in New York with.
Well,
isn't that fun?
That's very fun. Well, I don't know. Is getting a tattoo fun?
Do you have any?
Painful. I do not have any.
That's actually not surprising. I did not even have to ask that.
I've thought about it.
What would you get?
I have no idea. Yeah.
I feel like 15 or 20 years ago, you would have gotten like a Bible verse. But like in
20
Greek,
to 25.
you know, to show that you knew the real thing.
But I noted that you said 15 to 20 years ago you would have.
Yeah.
Implying I wouldn't now.
I don't think you would now. What would you do now?
See, my Bible scholar friends who like to make fun of theologians are laughing really big right now.
Good.
Yes, yeah.
I love it.
No, I don't. I have no idea what I would do now.
I would get a portrait of Wendell Berry on your forearm if I were you.
I love Wendell, but Wendell's too grumpy. I don't want him on my forearm.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe a more chipper person.
Maybe so. Yeah.
Taylor Swift, perhaps.
Probably not Taylor.
Lee,
I will say that I was so pleased when we were on vacation years ago, and our middle son, who's a kind of a fitness junkie, was working out in the living room of the Airbnb we were in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked down, he had his shirt off, and so I looked down and I saw a tattoo on his ribs on the side that we didn't know he had. And he was relatively young at the time. David, what? And so he starts laughing and he stands up and he lets us see, and it's a Greek phrase. And so he's like, you know, we don't know what it is. And I said, strength and honor. And he just started laughing really big because he was very pleased that I could
that you could actually read it
on his rib cage. Yes. So anyway,
and that's a great tattoo to have.
And then we also found out that our youngest had gone to the same stop to the tattoo parlor and gotten a Celtic cross done on his chest. So anyway,
the only people that are missing are you, Laura, and then is Chandler, the
and
last
our
one.
oldest son. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! If you guys got matching,
Yeah.
How cute.
Actually, our oldest does have a tattoo as well.
Oh,
Yes.
nice.
Yeah, so.
Then you were the last 2 remaining.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we'll see.
You never know. You still have time.
You do never know.
Contrary to some reviews, which seem to think that you might be a little bit older.
What are you talking about?
What a bridge. I actually am kind of proud of myself for that one. Well, I was going to say I wanted to read a couple of reviews.
Okay.
And I really loved this one. This is from Handy Dan 94.
Handy Dan.
Yes. He said, ever ask yourself what you actually think about something, unwilling to settle for just your gut reaction? The topics may be hot, but this is a no hot take podcast. Savannah and Lee are after something harder, a considered analysis on cultural moments most folks just scroll or stroll past. Bonus for this boomer. The 30-year age gap between Savannah and Lee greatly enriches the conversation. 2 real people, no performance, no pretense, just honest thinking out loud. And so I thought...
Handy Dan, that's a great review, except for one terribly wrong fact.
There's not a 30-year age gap. It's close.
It's 25.
It's 25.
5 years is a lot of years.
To be fair, he may have not thought you were older. He may have thought I was younger.
He may have.
And we'll go with that narrative for your heart, right? So anyways, thank you, Dan, for that. I'm guessing your name is Dan. And then let's talk about Eric. Eric left us a great review. All of these reviews from men. Thrilling news. It's called Badly Needed Nuance. Lee and Savannah's thoughtful and nuanced discussions of a wide range of topics has made this my favorite podcast every week. They do not shy away from controversial see their discussion of the culture wars, but do so in a way that provides more perspective and food for further consideration. I come away from each show challenged to test my own ideas while also encouraged, which actually I love that last line. I come away from each show challenged to test my own ideas while also encouraged.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, thank you for that review. That's Eric, right?
Eric on bass.
Eric on bass. Thank you, Eric on bass. And I think too, that's one of the things that is helpful for me is that, some of the things we talk about, I've written about, and whenever you write about something, you have to think very carefully and a long time about if you're going to publish it. But a lot of these things I've never thought about at any length, and so talking about them and knowing other people are going to be listening forces you to think more carefully. So I'm thankful for that.
To confront your own ideas.
Yeah, to confront my own ideas.
Yeah.
And also for us to be able to argue with ourselves and with one another, and not argue, but discuss with vibrancy, our
to get heated.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we haven't even talked since the last episode because we were so mad at each other. Imagine. Oh gosh, no, definitely not. But yeah, I agree. It does force us to confront our own ideas as well. And then last one, let's talk about this review from Dana. This was about the reality TV episode. She said this to Lee, I believe. You said my exact thoughts. Years ago when reality TV started, and I can't remember which show I watched for maybe a couple of times, I found it so fake and ridiculous that I knew this would indeed be a waste of mind space and have not been a fan of reality TV ever since. What is sad to me is how many people spend time watching these shows and then waste valuable relationship time discussing it. It's not realistic, yet people begin to think like this. In my opinion, just another avenue to dumb down the intelligence of society. That was on the clip that we posted of you basically saying that reality TV is not real.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And I think that was from Dana Davis, if I remember correctly, who's an old friend of mine from South Bend, Indiana days.
You're kidding?
No. Yeah.
Oh, so it's your friend.
Yes.
I love.
Thank you, Dana.
Can I still disagree with Dana?
Sure.
Okay, great. Dana, thank you for the review. I agree with her and I agree with you that reality TV is not real. Here is my thing. What is sad to me is how many people spend time watching these reality TV shows and then waste valuable relationship time discussing it. I think there's some pushback there.
Go ahead.
I have 3 group threads going at the moment named after shows we are watching. And to me, it feels like an easy touch point with people I love that I probably could not give an hour to you sitting down with them every day. Do you know what I mean? Uh-huh. So it's like touch points throughout the day of, did you see that episode? Oh my gosh, what do you think about this? Blah, blah, blah. I feel like that it could actually be used for good. I actually think that's one of the strengths of reality TV.
I see.
I actually did that with Sophie and Mary Evelyn this very day.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying there's some pushback there.
But you're just saying that you don't have time to sit down with Sophie and Mary Evelyn.
Exactly. And on that note, let's start the show.
Hey friend, if you didn't know, I started a newsletter a while back that comes out every 2 weeks. I've been delighted to hear from so many of you about the positive response to the newsletter. We call it the No Small Endeavor Notebook, where I riff on themes and topics related to our podcast, giving you additional material for thinking and doing in your own quest to make sense of what it might mean to live a good life. Join us by going now to nosmallendeavor.com and sign up there. Again, go to nosmallendeavor.com to sign up now for our free No Small Endeavor Notebook newsletter.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Welcome to the Subtext, where we go beneath the headlines and beyond the obvious. I'm Savannah Locke.
And I'm Lee C. Camp.
If you like what we're doing and want to help us get the show in front of more people, please do us a favor by following and rating it wherever you listen. If you leave us a review, we might read it on the show and agree or disagree. You just never know what's going to happen with us.
You never know.
Give us 5 stars, hype us up. If you want to watch full video episodes, you can find that on YouTube and Spotify. You can follow the show at The Subtext Show, me at Savannah_Locke, and Lee at Lee C. Camp. And if you have any questions or suggestions for the show, just DM us on Instagram at The Subtext Show. Lee, today you are the initiator of this episode idea for the first time in 23 episodes.
In first time. Yes. Yeah, I was fascinated with all of the talk around the war that has started, and the way that there were so many reports about theological justifications being given for the war, and help me with the stuff that you did read. That you prepped, on that.
Yeah, and I do just want to name that the first episode suggestion you have is literally war. I'm doing the heavy lifting out here, keeping things light, keeping things airy, and you're just here to take us to deep things.
To deep things.
Okay, so the article that I read was from The Guardian, and then there was a secondary article that I read from a journalist on Substack. But it was talking about how the Military Religious Freedom Foundation has received more than 200 complaints from service members across all branches of the armed forces, including the Marines, Air Force, and Space Force. One complainant, identified as a non-commissioned officer in a unit that could be deployed at any moment to join operations against Iran, told the MRFF in a complaint viewed by The Guardian that their commander had urged us to tell our troops that this was all part of God's divine plan, meaning that the war that they were waging was all part of God's divine plan. And he specifically referenced numerous citations out of the book of Revelation, referring to Armageddon and the imminent return of Jesus Christ. And then lastly, from this article, he said that President Trump has been anointed by Jesus, and in this, the person is referring to is Pete Hegseth, who is in charge of the Department of War. So Pete Hegseth said that the President Trump has been anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon and mark his return to Earth.
Yeah. So I think that, so I taught undergraduate and graduate classes in Christian ethics for 25 years. And so I would do this series of lectures on war and peace kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And when we would talk about typologies of ways to think about war, we would talk about nonviolence that was kind of normative in the first 3 centuries of the church. Mm-hmm. And we talk about the rise of the just war tradition in the 4th century, and then we would talk about the Crusades and the Holy War model. Mm-hmm. So the Holy War model, and we can dig into any of this that you think would be interesting. Mm-hmm. Holy War model, of course, coming off of Old Testament models about war, but also was relevant to the Middle Ages and the Crusades. And then I always get to this place of where I would say, of course, no one takes the Holy War Crusade model seriously for war anymore, and you can't find any legitimate Christian ethicist who would ever say that this is a legitimate model for thinking about war. Mm-hmm. And then I would go on and talk about nonviolence and the just war tradition. Mm-hmm. And yet here we are, it seems, at this point where all of a sudden that a literally medieval construct is being used in the name of Jesus to justify war. And I find that deeply problematic.
Yeah, that is deeply problematic. Yeah, because I want to think about this through the lens of ethics and theology, and less maybe of geopolitics, unless you have a strong opinion on that.
I mean, I think that I'm not a geopolitical expert, and so I don't, I know what other people read in the New York Times and so forth and so on, or the Economist or whatever. But yeah, for me, it's more if people are going to get out of their lane, so-called, and get it into a lane that I know something about, then okay, well, let's talk about it. Yeah. That's kind of the way I think about it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, going into kind of what your concerns were, it reminds me of what Jamar Tisby said after all of this stuff from The Guardian was announced, which was talking about these different military people being concerned about Pete Hegseth using Christian language to wage a holy war in ushering the return of Christ. Okay, so Jamar Tisby said this: when dispensational theology directly informs foreign policy without critical reflection on moral accountability, it creates not only geopolitical dangers, but theological distortions. Such an approach neither glorifies God nor serves humanity. It diminishes the ethical witness of the church and endangers global peace.
Yeah. Yes, I generally agree with what Jamar says there. I mean, my understanding is that, to get geeky just a minute, because we probably don't want to go too far down this lane, but I don't think Hegseth, from what I understand, is dispensationalist. And there's some interesting distinctions between dispensationalism and this small group of Reformed people that he apparently is a part of, that is headed up by a guy named Doug Wilson.
Doug Wilson,
who's huge right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's some interesting theological differences between John Darby's dispensationalism going back to the 19th century and this kind of work, and the ways it would think about Israel and history and the rapture and so forth and so on. But one of the things that is in common is that the theological convictions are leading to ways of thinking about war that are potentially much more hostile than other ways of thinking about Christian faith and Christian tradition. So, I mean, for me, probably one of the reasons that, I would want to suggest that we talk about something like this is that a long time ago, I came to a conviction that sometimes I wish I had never come to. And that is that it's hard for me to read the New Testament without understanding that Jesus calls us to nonviolence.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy conviction to have come to, and it's not an easy conviction to hold. And I just assume not have to hold it, But people who have tried to convince me otherwise haven't been able to convince me otherwise. And I'm not saying that even sometimes push comes to shove if I think I can practice it very well. But I think that it's the normativity of the gospel calls us to nonviolence. And moreover, the fact that it's not disputed that, you go back to somebody like Roland Bainton, who was a professor at Yale in the 20th century, who wrote a famous book on Christian attitudes toward war, peace, and revolution, I think was the title of his book. And he talks about how all extant documents that we have from the early church fathers, they all reject Christian participation in war.
Yeah.
And this is up until the early 4th century.
Yeah.
And it's just beyond debate. Now, there are debates about why that we could talk about, but it's beyond dispute that they all said this is not what Christians do. And then with the rise of Constantine and then further Emperor Theodosius, you have Ambrose, Bishop of Milan, who teaches Augustine. They pick up Greco-Roman notions of war. That's the so-called just war tradition. And so the idea is there is not, it's just war. Instead, there are cases in which war is justifiable. And that whole approach there is war is always regrettable. But under certain circumstances, you got to do it.
It's inevitable.
It's inevitable. It's not necessarily inevitable that you would do it, but under certain horrific situations of injustice and violence, you just got to do it.
Like it's excusable? Is that better language?
It's excusable.
Okay,
that's right. So it's justifiable, right?
Okay.
Even though we would regret that we're doing it because we believe in the peaceable kingdom of God ushered in by Jesus. So it's never celebratory. It's always lamented, and even like in the 11th century. So this would have been in the Middle Ages, right? Same time that they're doing some of the Crusades in the Norman Conquest. Archers who participated in that war, even though the Pope had given his blessing to the Norman Conquest of what we call England now. Even though the Pope had given his blessing and had given the ring to go into the war, the archers who participated in that war had to do penance for the rest of their life because they didn't know how many people they would kill because they were shooting these arrows and they couldn't see who all they had killed. And so that's what the just war tradition was doing all along. It was saying, okay, it's bad. We never celebrate it. And even if you do it, even when it's justifiable, there's penance to be done, right? And so that's a world of difference from a sort of glorified celebration of war, much less this kind of machismo kind of stuff of using Jesus' name to justify this kind of stuff. And it's also a very kind of different notion of holy war as something to be celebrated, and you just go in and kill as many people as you can.
In the name of God.
In the name of God.
Okay, so I have a lot of questions. Number one, let's start from the beginning of what you just said, and I want to go through.
Okay.
Number one, you said that there are some reasons why some people give that in the first few centuries of Christianity that they weren't violent people. Are there any reasons that would argue against what you're saying right now? Like, do people
Which part?
Of them not being violent, that maybe they couldn't be violent because they didn't have the resources or whatever?
Yeah, well, the common question is, were they nonviolent because they believed that Jesus taught you're never to be violent?
Right.
Or were they nonviolent because it made no sense to fight in support of an empire that was persecuting you?
Oh, meaning that the option would be like that they wouldn't fight with the Roman Empire because the Roman Empire was against them.
Right.
Okay. Was there any example of Christians fighting against the Roman Empire that were against them?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, yeah. So that's kind of what you're saying then, is that this nonviolence over those centuries was demonstrated by Christians. But the counter argument to that would be maybe they weren't fighting with Rome because Rome was against them.
Right.
Right.
And a related thing there is that, to be a member of the Roman military, as I understand it, you had to take this vow.
Yeah.
And you're taking a vow to honor the emperor, to the Caesar, Augustus or the Caesar. And so that was seen by some as a sort of illegitimate act of allegiance to an authority when your sole authority is Christ.
It divides your loyalty.
It divides you. It divides your allegiance. And the way I think about that is like those are both flip sides of the same coin. It's like if your allegiance is to Christ and Christ teaches you this way, then that's the way that you've committed yourself to be, right? And the fact is that empires, and this is one of the ironies, right? The only authority these days that we think can legitimately tell us to kill our enemies is the nation state or the empire. And so there's this strange thing of, a lot of people regularly pledge their allegiance to the nation state. So a lot of people these days pledge their allegiance to the nation state. And so it's the same sort of kind of question of, is it legit for you to pledge your allegiance to a nation state that is telling you to do to your enemies what Jesus has told you not to do to your enemies? What do you do with that? And I think that, again, that's definitely a dilemma at best, if not an invitation to reject your former allegiance at worst.
Totally.
Yeah.
That even the counter argument for you could be a sign of their devoted commitment to the way of Jesus.
Right.
Because they refuse to divide their allegiance
to the
to
lordship
the
of
empire.
Jesus. That's
Yeah,
right.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we get into, after those first 3 centuries, then you get into the Constantine era where there was more violence being done. Do you blame everything on Constantine? I feel like it's a big Anabaptist thing.
Do I blame everything on Constantine? No.
I'm fine with blaming Constantine.
Well, I mean, first of all, factually, Constantine, the way I think about Constantine is that you had these, you had a big persecution in 250, and then at the end of the 3rd century, you had another big persecution, and Christians were, during those times were being stomped on, didn't have any kind of legal right to practice their faith, and they were a persecuted minority. They weren't persecuted all the time, and even with some of the persecutions, it wasn't widespread, but those two especially were pretty difficult. And so Constantine, in effect, comes along and says, "Nope, you've got right. We were going to tolerate you now." And who doesn't want that?
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
Of course. Why do we don't want to blame Constantine for that? Good for Constantine. Now there are other kind of complicated factors about Constantine, but why pick on Constantine for giving religious tolerance? Right. In my mind, it's more difficult that by the end of the 4th century, Emperor Theodosius comes along, and he makes Christianity the only legal religion. And so now what's happened is that you've gone from the end of the 3rd century with Christians being persecuted, and all of the leaders of the Christian tradition saying we Christians don't fight in war for the emperor. By a century later, you have to be a baptized Christian to be a member of the Roman military.
Yeah, right.
So that's a huge shift that
Massive
has
shift.
Sweeping implications in its wake, right? And so then what you have in time is that the power of an empire that then can be used to persecute non-Christians. And so again, that's a sweeping change. And so the way I like to think about it, the way it helps me to think about this is that you go from thinking about Christianity as a way of life that includes nonviolence and love of enemies to it becoming a religion that you can propagate by hook or by crook. And that's precisely what happened. By the time you get to Charlemagne in the late 700s, there's just stories about him going out and conquering in the War of the Franks. He goes out and conquers, and his grandson reports their baptismal policy. You know this baptismal policy? They go in and they they have this battle of conquering, and they go in and they say, you can either, you can choose to be baptized and you will live, or you can choose not to be baptized and you'll be killed. And so, heck, a lot of people get baptized.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but what you see there is this kind of move of which now you're coming full flower with the power of the Holy Roman Empire being used to force so-called religion on somebody. Whereas the early church would have looked at it and said, that's bizarre.
Yeah.
This isn't a religion that you can spread whatever way. That the consistency of the message has to be in consistency, coherence with the claims of the one that you're claiming to follow.
Yeah, that the ends don't justify the means for the early church.
Right.
But then as it starts getting solidified through military and government, then the ends start to justify the means, even if the means were anti-Christian.
That's right.
Yeah.
It has been so delightful to see more and more listeners like you sign up for NSC Plus. Our growing community is made up of intelligent and thoughtful people looking for a holistic approach to human flourishing. Signing up for NSC Plus is also a way to support the show and the work we're doing, and in fact, we depend upon that kind of support. But in addition to supporting the show, you'll get exclusive access to bonus content, and the No Small Endeavor you've come to love will be completely ad-free. In fact, you won't even hear ads like this one. So go to nosmallendeavor.com and click Join NSC Plus to become a member of our community today. Join for as little as $5 a month. Again, go to nosmallendeavor.com, click on that red button that says Join NSC Plus to become a member today.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, you can say that there are ways in which the so-called Christianization of the Western world in those ways, almost in spite of itself, I might say, brings the wake of a lot of wonderful things to the Western world, namely things like what becomes our tradition of human rights, right? And to realize that there's a certain equality among all people. And you go back and you look at the Roman Empire, there was no equality among all people. You look at Aristotle, there was no equality of all people. There's a demeaning of slaves, there's a demeaning of women. And so what happens in the wake of the Christian tradition, even these kind of nominal forms of the Christian tradition, there are some wonderful things that come out of that. But again, it's a different sort of thing than saying we are a community that are trying to follow the way of Christ. And we know if we follow the way of Christ, it means that we're going to be often a minority community rather than trying to run an empire or try to run a nation state.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and those few centuries are really important, I think. And I'm happy the way that you explained it too, to show how quickly, like in 100 years, things changed so much for Christians. And it started with Constantine, but it didn't end. A lot of people think that Constantine was the beginning and the end for that. But I'm happy that you brought in everything over the course of the 100 years, where they went from being this very organic, underground religion with no rights to then all of a sudden Christianity was the way to become more powerful through the military and through politics, which is wild. So very important parts of our history. How does that all relate in our Christian history to what we're seeing today with the language that's maybe being wrapped around our current military escapades? I'm scared to call it a war because some people are saying it's not a war, but then other people are saying it's a war. So military escapades it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's being called Operation Epic Fury.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so when you're using kind of internet meme language like Operation Epic Fury, that's like comic book stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of gross.
It is. Yeah.
And it's kind of sickening because you're talking about people getting killed by stuff falling, missile coming down out of the sky and blowing your blasted neighborhood up. Right. Yeah. And so I think that's one of the things that's so frustrating to me. It's like, I've talked about this stuff a lot in my career, and people sometimes will say, why don't you talk about that stuff? And I'm thinking, wouldn't you want somebody to talk about this if you were on the receiving end of this stuff, where people are killing your families and killing your friends and blowing up your community and destroying everything that you care about, and nobody on the other side of the people who are citizens in that country are saying anything about it? Don't you want somebody to say something about this stuff? And so I think it's incumbent upon us to say, this is gross, and this is really problematic, especially the way it's being justified.
Yeah, particularly the way it's being justified. Yeah. So as you think about the way that it's being justified, and with the original report that I read, which talked about the hundreds of different service people complaining about the language of Armageddon, things being part of God's divine plan, etc., how do you see that in light of Christian history? And for you, is it just that it is reutilizing medieval holy war language in order to justify our own violence, or do you think that there's anything else going on there?
One of the first things to look at, for example, is that when you think about that typology I gave you a minute ago, early church nonviolence, then the just war tradition, then holy war crusade stuff. So the difference between the just war tradition and crusading models, or the just war tradition and holy war models, is that the just war tradition, if you actually read it and study it, it's a very demanding set of moral rules. And it's like, you can only go to war if A, B, C, D, E, and F. And then once you get in the war, you cannot do X, Y, Z, M, N, O, and P. And so it's because the just war tradition is concerned to minimize death and destruction, and to make it a limited engagement that brings about peace as quickly as possible, because it always laments war. And so it has a lot of interesting prohibitions. Now, think about the difference between that and the crusading and holy war model. Crusading and holy war model, and it's kind of problematic, but I would get too geeky if I get into too many different distinctions here. But generally speaking, crusading and holy war model is not concerned about limits. It's just like, let's go show them who's boss, and we're going to kick their ass, and we're going to destroy them and grind them down in the dirt, and we'll show them who's who, right? And it's the more we can kill, the more we can impose our will, then look at us, God bless us, because we've got God on our side because we just destroyed you this way. Well, that's the crusading holy war model. And when you go back and you look at the history of the Crusades, a lot of times it's just unfathomable. Some years ago, I went and spent a month in the Middle East writing a book on Christianity and Islam, on war and peace stuff. And I will never forget, one day I had gotten to know this very prominent Muslim theologian in Jerusalem. He's still in Jerusalem. He's one of the most prominent Muslim theologians in Jerusalem. So we were eating at the American Colony Hotel, and the American Colony Hotel originally was the site of an intentional Christian community that Horatio Spafford, who wrote the hymn "It Is Well With My Soul," was a part of. And so we're sitting in the courtyard. It's a beautiful hotel, and we're sitting in the courtyard, the open courtyard of that hotel. And I had gotten to know this gentleman a bit, and this was not our first time to meet. And he's sitting across from me at lunch, and he says, just very straightforward, he says, "Did you know that in one of the Crusades, the Christians ate the Muslims?" And I said, "I only learned that yesterday," because I had been in this research library, and I had found this incredible account of the way in which in one of the Crusades, the Christians came in, they were famished, and according to these historical reports, they cannibalized the Muslims. Now, you think I ever got told that story in seminary? You think my church history professor ever told me that story? Heck no, right? Because we're not going to tell stories about our side, right? We tell the stories about their side and what they do, right? And they tell stories about our side and what we did. And so the thing is, why can't we learn each other's stories? And but in any case, all of that stuff, with all of that stuff, is this sort of celebration of gore and celebration of violence in that kind of way of thinking about war. Whereas, again, the just war tradition is about limits, right?
Yeah.
So just think about, for example, this weekend it was reported that President Trump is now demanding an unconditional surrender of Iran.
Yeah.
That's prohibited by the just war tradition. Because if you demand an unconditional surrender from somebody, what you've done is you've cut off a peace process by which somebody can walk away with any kind of dignity. Right. Now, am I saying that I think that there's somehow some good in the regime in Iran? No, they seem to be rotten, violent administration and regime, right? And no one is going to be sad to see the murderous impulses of the guy who was killed and the stuff that he was doing.
Yeah.
But that's beside the point here.
Yeah.
The point is that when you demand unconditional surrender, just like Truman did to Japan, what you do is you escalate stuff rather than de-escalate stuff.
Right.
And by escalating stuff, you're going to get more and more and more and more people killed, right? And so again, the just war tradition is saying, back down, back down, back down. You've also got stuff about Hegseth, who has a Crusader tattoo, right? Article in Politico. There's plenty of articles about this. Article in Politico from December of 2024, talking about Hegseth having a Crusader tattoo, a Jerusalem cross, right? That was widely used by the Crusaders. He had a book in 2020 called American Crusade.
Yeah.
And there's this famous line that gets quoted all the time that he says something like, our call is not to violently take up the sword, period, yet, period. And that was 6 years ago. Well, now it seems that maybe that time in his mind maybe has come.
The
right?
yet is now, yeah.
And so as well, that same Politico article that I was talking about, and then again, this is reported all sorts of places, also has a tattoo that reads Deus Vult, which was a slogan, a Latin slogan from the Crusades that just means God wills it. And so again, there's all these kind of appeals to crusading language and crusading motifs that's saying we're not playing with these rules anymore.
Right.
God's on our side.
Right.
And we're going to go in and smack the shit out of everybody that we can.
Yeah.
And we're going to kick because God's on our side. And it's deeply unchristian while using the name Christian.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what's really helpful in this conversation and what you're clarifying a lot of is the difference between like a crusade war mentality and a just war mentality. Because I think that the more you're describing both, the more that it's clearer that the mentality, at least of the people in charge at the moment, is the crusade mentality, which is we're just going to decimate these people and we're going to wrap it in Christian language to prove that God is on our side. It reminds me of a quote from Pete Hegseth did like a press conference last week. And he said, "Death and destruction from the sky all day long, we're playing for keeps. Our warfighters have maximum authorities granted personally by the president and yours truly. Our rules of engagement are bold, precise, and designed to unleash American power, not shackle it. We are punching them while they are down."
Yeah.
And I think that when I think about that in contrast to a just war theory or to Jesus's words, I think that it makes it at least clear for people as they're processing this where this might fit in Christian history and for us to take into consideration the ethical implications of that or theological implications of that. I want to talk about, before we have to close, but there's so much to get to here, I want to talk a little bit about dispensationalism and where that might come into the conversation, because I've seen this a lot from different Christian theologians and influencers talking about dispensational theology as it relates to this. So can you quickly break down what dispensationalism is, and then we can just chat about it?
I'm not very good at this.
You are so good at this. You are a teacher.
I know,
a
but
professor,
I've never
a scholar.
I've never read just a whole lot of Darby. I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up. I can give a few snippets.
Yeah, give snippets.
So, the idea is that with dispensationalism, there are these different dispensations, and that God is working in slightly different ways in some given time. And then there's a lot of prediction about the way various things are going to happen in the Middle East that are going to usher in the return of Christ.
Right.
And that is that part especially that we seem to be getting picked up at this moment by some people.
Exactly. That basically in dispensational theology are what a lot of people, and there are actually a lot of subcultures within dispensationalism, but that Israel and now America play this huge role in ushering Jesus back for his second coming. And that dispensational theology, well, I do agree, I think Doug Wilson's church that Pete Hegseth goes to or is at least pastored by, that they don't believe in dispensationalism in this purest form, but I do think that the influence is there in that Hegseth purporting that Trump is ushering in Jesus through this Armageddon-like war in Iran utilizing Israel is dispensational theology. Do you know what I'm saying?
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I would be more comfortable with a little more limited assertion.
Please do.
In that what seems to be at play in the current, many of the people involved in speaking into theologically the current administration clearly have a highly Christian nationalist perspective that sees America as having some sort of messianic role in history.
Okay, so for you, you're saying that it's not the dispensationalism piece as much as Christian nationalism.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so go ahead and go with that argument.
Yeah. So, I mean, first I want to step back and say I've had a lot of people say to me, so what is Christian nationalism?
Right.
And there are some people that throw that label around so broadly that I think it's quite unhelpful. So let's say if somebody wants to bring some conviction that they have because they're Christian
Right.
to bear upon the public square,
Right.
then people are saying, oh, that's Christian nationalism. And
Right.
I'm thinking, it's not Christian nationalism.
Right.
If we think something is good and true and beautiful, we want our neighbors to embrace it.
Right.
And we want public policy to embrace it.
Right.
And so don't pick on the Christians because they say, let's care for the unborn, or let's care for the poor, or let's care for breaking down racism.
Yeah.
And they say, I believe all that stuff because of my faith. Well, don't say, well, that's to be discarded because that's Christian nationalism. It's not Christian nationalism. It's what we all do. We try to bring our perspective and our convictions to bear upon the public square. The way I understand a better definition of Christian nationalism, I think, is to think that a nation state, any nation state, has some sort of messianic role in human history, and that it has been chosen by God in such a way that God has allied God's self with that nation state to make something happen in human history, so that the nation is special in that way,
Yeah.
Anointed in some way. And that's what you see with all of this language about restoring a Christian America,
Right.
is that it's presuming a nationalist kind of thing, as if this our nation state has been chosen in a special way, so we've got to restore that to bring this kind of stuff about. So whatever it is, the war in the Middle East or whatever, right, the Christian nationalism is saying, well, we've got to fight for this to make it Christian again. And so, you have a number of movements that are trying to make this case in various ways. And again, this is I don't know if it's a minority perspective or not, but again, I would say there's no such thing as a Christian nation ever. And I say that because I believe that Jesus calls us to nonviolence. That is, that nations exist based upon boundaries and borders that are historical accidents, and violence is used to protect those borders and boundaries and to seek the self-interest of that nation state. And those things, can they be used by God for good? God uses everything for good. But that's not the way of Christ, right? And so the way of Christ stands in tension with the way of nation states. And so when you want to call a nation state a Christian nation, it's like you can't have both. You
Right.
can't have your cake and eat it too.
Right.
Is it Christian or is it a nation state? Because Christianity is inherently transnational and transboundaried. And so nonetheless, so there are a lot of people that want to have a so-called Christian nation. And then this leads to this kind of horrific escapades, if you will.
Which are being done by all kinds of nations. But what makes this particularly horrific, and what we're specifically talking to is doing it in the name of Christ.
In the name of Christ, right?
Right.
Look, this is not an especially American thing. You can go back and the Nazis, the Germans in both World War I and World War II wore belt buckles that said "Gott mit uns," God with us, right? This is what nation states have done this forever, for a long time, right? And so it's not a particularly American thing. But this goes, I think one time we mentioned the Bob Dylan song, "With God on Our Side," right? This is what he says, is that this is what we do, is that we claim God's on our side.
Yeah.
And because God's on our side, that then leads to what some people call an exceptionalism. Mm-hmm. And so exceptionalism in at least two senses. An exception in that we are special, and an exceptionalism in that we get an exception to do things that we wouldn't let anybody else get away with. And so again, the ripple effects. And so this is another, I'll just, a quick parenthetical here. It's another reason that it, as somebody who cares about theology, it exasperates me when secular people act like we don't want to talk about theology in public. It's like, well, you sure better want to be talking about theology in public because it's affecting what people are doing, and you want to understand it. Yeah. Right. Just like as a Christian, I want to understand the way Muslims are thinking about things, whether they are violent Muslims or pacifist Muslims, and there are both. Right. I want to understand the way that they're thinking about things, and I want them to understand the way I'm thinking about things, and I want to understand the way the secularists are thinking about things, and I want the secularists to care about how we are thinking about things, so that we can try to have a sort of community in which we can find some sort of way to live together in some sort of flourishing manner. Yeah. You got me preaching again today,
Oh my God,
Savannah.
I really did. The thing is that with you, all I have to do is talk about violence or nonviolence, and I know that your Baptist sermon voice is going to come out, even though you're not Church of Christ background. No, but the preacher voice that you use is, and I don't know how to explain that.
Ouch.
Is there anything we missed?
Well, yeah, there's loads more that we can say. I know, that's what sucks. We've got to shut it down. Is that we have
to shut it down. Yes. Yeah, because I actually don't think I disagree with you saying it has nothing to do with dispensationalism, but we also don't have time. Yeah. So we're just going to have to end the conversation. Yes. But this was a good one.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Okay. Greatly.